Hi, I'm Kirsten, the Ectopic Pregnancy Support Podcast host. Thank you for listening, and I hope these stories and conversations bring you comfort and help you feel less alone. Enjoy this episode. Hi, Samantha. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Yes, I'm happy that you're here, not considering the circumstances, but thank you for joining me and having this discussion.
Thank you for having me on and having a bunch of women on to share their story and to give awareness to everybody and help people and support them through this.
Of course, of course. So you and I talked a little bit about your story, and you have had 4 miscarriages and 3 ectopics in the last 2 years.
3.5 years.
3.5 years. Excuse
me. So we're coming up on 4 years in October.
Okay. So should we just start from the beginning?
Sure.
Okay.
All right. So I'll just jump right in. So we first found out we were pregnant October of 2021. Super excited. Wasn't planning on having a baby at the time, but it fell into our hands and we were super excited. And that excitement lasted about 3 weeks. 3 weeks in, I started to have some cramping and some bleeding. So I called the OB, and as many of you know, they don't see you until about 9 or 10 weeks, even if you're having cramping and spotting. So I took myself to the emergency room because that was the best option to do at the time. They ran my blood. They did my HCG. They did an ultrasound. And at the time, I was only about 6 weeks along, so they couldn't see anything on the ultrasound. And my HCG was at about 375. So it was pretty low for how far along I was. So they had just said, just come back every 2 days. We're going to monitor your HCG. And I wound up going every 2 days for about a week, and it was slowly going up. It wasn't doubling. It was going up about 50 to 75 to maybe 100 each rise. So we never got a double after that first doubling. On my 4th HCG draw, it had jumped about 500. So we were concerned at that. So they brought me in for an ultrasound. And ladies, if you've never had a transvaginal ultrasound, welcome to the club. Brought me in, and they were able to locate the egg on my left tube, very close to my ovary. So they were a little cautious of where the spot was if they wanted to go in and do surgery, just because if it did rupture, it could, they were worried about my ovary as well. But they left it up to me, and I decided to go with the methotrexate shot because I still wanted to be able to try and keep my tube and do all the things possible. And for me, the first one, it worked. The methotrexate, they gave me 2 rounds of it, 1 in each side of my hips. And we just watched my levels for the next couple of weeks. Took about 5 weeks for my level to get back down to under 5. And that was our first one. And as a first pregnancy, it is scary alone to be pregnant for the first time. And then being told it's ectopic when you don't really know what an ectopic is at that time.
Right.
And then also like being in a hospital, and nothing towards emergency room workers because they have the hardest job in the world. However, their bedside it's not known for bedside. So I had gone in, and before I knew what was going on, I had a nurse come in, and she was just like, all right, so we're going to give you this shot for your ectopic and this and this and this. And I'm just sitting there like, what? I don't know what's going on. I just came back from she's like, oh, the doctor hasn't been in and talked to you yet. And I was like, no, not yet. So I'm just sitting there like, now I'm Googling because I'm like, what is an ectopic? Like all the things. That was our first experience with our pregnancy.
Wow. So they gave you the choice. And you chose methotrexate. How much time did you have to choose?
Pretty much they said I can by the end of the day. So they were going to either keep me in the hospital up until the end of the day, or I could just get the shot right then and there and then be on my way and then just be in for monitoring. Being that it was my first one, and after doing like a quick bout of research, and like I was like, all right, well, they're not common, like the chances of having a second one are very uncommon. So I was like, you know what, we'll do it this way and see what happens. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, that was our first one. And then we gave ourselves a couple of months off. We had to wait at least 3 months because of the medicine in your system and all that kind of stuff.
What were your symptoms following methotrexate?
Yeah, so my symptoms from methotrexate the first time were I had some bad nausea. I felt like lower abdomen cramping, which were very similar to like the cramps I was having as with the ectopic. So I couldn't tell if that was from the medicine or the nausea, but they did give me some nausea medicine for that. I honestly, the first 2 weeks, didn't have any symptoms from the medication. I actually got like after effects of the medication because I wound up with 2 doses. So like one dose on one side and one dose to the other. And I actually lost my hair from it. So
Wow.
yeah. And I had asked one of my doctors about it and they were like, and it was all just like kind of like postpartum, how like your
Yeah.
same exact thing. All on the top, it was growing back, all underneath it was growing back.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say the shot itself, it burned when it went in. It's
Yes.
like kind of like a flu shot in a sense, like you're sore in that spot for a couple of days after.
Mm-hmm.
And they just told me, not bed rest, but modified bed rest, no lifting anything because they didn't want to have any chances of it rupturing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That rush of heat after the injection was wild. And I remember it so vividly. Like
It reminds me of
yeah,
like the rush you get from morphine. Like
yes.
it's that same sense of a feeling, but except it doesn't make you feel good after.
Right.
It just kind of
Right.
wipes you out.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you got that at the ER.
Yep, they gave that to
Okay.
me at the ER. They had called over to my OB and the OB had told them like you can go ahead and do it because my OB's office, they actually can administer it at the office if need be. But I was already at the hospital, so it was just easier and safer to do it that way.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And where are you located?
I'm in Maryland.
Okay. I
Mhm.
could tell a little bit by your accent. I
So it's actually
um,
funny. I'm originally from New Jersey. I just moved here about 3 years ago, so I'm starting to pick up like a little bit, but I'll still have like certain things you'll pick up.
yeah,
Where are you
I could
located?
definitely tell there was a New Jersey accent there, but I could, they're not too far apart. I'm from Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Michigan's beautiful.
Yes. It is beautiful.
It is.
I love the state. I wouldn't, so many people say, "Oh, I can't do the winters up there," but yeah, the winters can be long, but I love the seasons.
Yeah,
I really do.
yep, I'm the same way. If I don't have 4 seasons, I don't want to be there. I
Yes.
don't want to have like a warm Christmas. I don't want any of that.
Yes, me too. It would be so weird to have a warm Christmas.
Very much so.
Yeah. Okay, so you had methotrexate
Hmm.
with your ectopic. That was your first pregnancy.
Yep.
I can sympathize with how you felt because mine was also my first pregnancy. And to go from, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant, and Googling what should I plan for in pregnancy, I automatically did a 180 and had to Google what an ectopic was. What does this mean? What's a treatment? How is this going to change me in the future? Like all of these things.
Yeah.
And it's just a big learning curve.
Very much so. And then especially like I feel like especially when it's your first, it's like it changes your whole outlook on any type of futures. Like because that was your first for everything. It was your first positive. And it kind of gets like ripped away from you in a sense.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's really sad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you decided to wait a little while.
Yep. So we waited the 3 months like they had told us to, waited for my levels to go down. And then I gave myself like 2 more cycles. And at this point, we were in the process of buying a home. So we were like, we'll wait until we get into our home and get settled. So we closed on our house in June, found out I was pregnant at the end of June. So it was like perfect timing.
Yes.
And then unfortunately, that lasted about 7 weeks. And I wound up miscarrying.
Okay.
And that was rough. Because it was different than the ectopic. It's same in the sense of you're losing something but different in the way that it's happening. To where ectopic, it was, here's a medication, it's going to take care of itself. You go home and it'll be okay. To where miscarriages, it's a little different because they just kind of send you on your way. And they're like, it'll be like a heavy period. And you're like, okay. And it's not. Some people it is. But a lot of people it's not like that. And it's a little traumatizing. And having it be my second pregnancy, then it was kind of just, I'm a very big advocate. I'm like, Murphy's Law. Like, I joke about it, like, whatever can go wrong will go wrong. And at this point, we're like, well, we're 2 for 2. So, like, third time's a charm. So, I just heard a lot of people have awesome experiences, like going from one right to the other. So, that's what we did. We waited about 2 months, maybe I think it was 1 cycle or 2 cycles in between, got pregnant again and miscarried again at 5.5 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Were those experiences vastly different, or would you say they were very much similar, as in it seemed like a heavy period?
Yeah. So my first the first miscarriage I had was definitely more of like, I could tell it was more than a heavy period, like something was wrong. So where the second miscarriage, it was a little earlier on. So that one was closer to like a period in a sense of like the amount that you're losing. However, with us, I was tracking so heavily that I knew at like 2.5, 3 weeks that I was pregnant. Like I was popping on a pregnancy test at 5 to 6 DPO. So I knew right away. So that's also like a double negative, like a double-edged sword on that end. Like it's great that you find out so early, but at the same time, it's like,
right.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry that you went through that so close together. I mean, all 3 of those losses, let alone the 2 that were kind of back to back. And at this point, you were moved into your house.
Yep.
Okay.
We had just moved in June, and I had miscarried in July.
Okay.
So, and then we got engaged in August, which was wonderful. And then from there, I was like, I just want to like enjoy our engagement, plan our wedding. And if it happens, it happens, but I'm not going to be tracking. I'm not going to be doing any of that anymore. Like, I just want to enjoy our time for now. Like, we just bought a house. We want to enjoy it. So we did. We enjoyed our year. And then right before the wedding, kind of, in July again, I found out I was pregnant. And that was my second ectopic. And that one I knew very quickly again that I was pregnant. I was tracking my HCG just because of my past, and with my miscarriages, I just wanted to make sure everything was going in the right direction. And this one, we were excited. It went from 220 to 640 in 2 days. So we were over the moon. We were so excited. And we got about 6.5 weeks. And all of a sudden the bleeding and cramping started. And I just knew, like, and then maybe like 2 days in, I got that same pain on my left side. And I knew. And this one is interesting because I was sent home from the hospital and was told I was miscarrying. So they found a blighted ovum. No, they found a pseudo-sac in my uterus. And the ER doctor had told me that I was miscarrying, and just they weren't able to see anything in the sac. And just to go home, I've done this before, unfortunately, and I was like, I really don't think, like, I'm in a lot of pain. Like, it feels different, like where the pain is and all this. And they're like, no, like, can't see anything, this and that. That was on a Wednesday. And then 2 days later, I wound up back in that same ER. And I went in, went to the front desk, and I looked at the woman. She looked at me, and she could just tell I wasn't okay. And she's like, we'll get you back right away. Brought me back for an ultrasound. And I knew something was wrong because I walked back to my ultrasound, and they wheelchaired me back out.
Really?
Uh-huh. And I looked over at the ultrasound tech, and they're not able to tell you anything, obviously. And she's like, I'm going to get you a wheelchair. And I said, I'm okay to walk. And she was like, I'm going to get you a wheelchair. And I said, okay. And I kind of just like didn't know. And I've never had one rupture before. So I didn't know what that type of feeling was like. But I can tell you, it feels like almost like that warm sensation feeling, but like a bag of sand mixed in with it. So then they brought me back to our room. And then, of course, we get the My Chart results before the doctor comes in and talks with us.
I just don't understand that whatsoever.
I don't either.
It blows my mind that is how we get our results.
Yep. So I get my phone and I open it up, and I know I shouldn't have, because I was like, I should wait for the doctor. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm in so much pain. Like, I need to know what's going on. And there it was, ruptured ectopic left side. And I had so much blood in my abdomen that I was about, I think they said about 150 mLs from a transfusion. So I had already ruptured when I was in the ER the first time, and they had just missed it because the blood was so low in my abdomen that they just thought it was a little bit of fluid from the miscarriage.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you said, no, this feels different.
Yep.
Something is wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. So I wound up back in, and by the time I was in, it was obviously way too late to do anything. My left tube completely ruptured. Thankfully, my ovary was okay, and that didn't get damaged in it. But that was scary. Going in thinking one thing and then just being rushed into surgery and waking up, and yeah.
That's so scary and traumatic. And it just makes me so sad because there are so many stories of this same exact situation.
Yep.
Going to the ER, being sent home, and then being rushed back only to have surgery ASAP.
Yep. If I waited like another 6 to 12 hours, we don't know what would have happened. So, yeah.
Did you run into the person working who sent you home?
The ER doctor?
Yeah.
So I never ran back into them. And my neighbor, actually, she is a labor and delivery nurse at that hospital. And when I was talking to her about it, she's like, that doctor was a traveling ER doctor. So he was only popping in and then he popped out. So it wasn't even but I will say it completely changed my outlook on that hospital. It completely traumatized me on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So from when you got to the ER that second time, when they told you that it's ruptured, how much time did you have between when you walked in the doors and when you got surgery?
I would say maybe a total of 2.5 to 3 hours. And that was
Wow.
for blood work, ultrasounds, getting an OR ready. And they had to have, they had to call in because it was a Sunday. So they had to call in the surgery team. So we had to wait for them.
Wow.
I will say surgery itself went wonderful. I healed wonderfully from it. However, I did go to my bachelorette party 5 days after.
Oh my gosh.
The doctor had asked me, he's like, do you have any questions for me? I was like, I just have one. I have my bachelorette party this weekend. He was like, where are you going? And I was like, just to the Poconos. We rented a house in the woods. And he was like, completely up to you. He's like, physically, it's laparoscopic. You will be up and moving around in 3 days. He goes, if you feel like you can do it, then go ahead. And my sisters and my girlfriends were like, if you don't want to do it, we will cancel it. But I was like, kind of exactly what I need right now. So it was the perfect weekend.
Yeah, I feel like that would have been just a good way to have that support system during that really hard time.
Especially having the most important people, especially the girls in my life who are my bridesmaids and my sisters, all together in the same time, the most time that I needed the most. It kind of it was a perfect weekend. It was sad. It was happy. It was exciting. It was all the things.
Yeah. So how far out was your wedding then?
So my ectopic surgery was in July and our wedding was October.
Okay. So pretty close. Yeah.
Yep. I had planned on a dress that I had bought in my back of my head, when I was looking at dresses, I was like, get one that in case you are for some reason pregnant, it can be tight here and just be a little bit more loose. And if you get a little bigger, you get a little bigger. And that's what I did. And it was, but it was, yeah.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So you had that in July, went on your bachelorette party. How did you feel when you got home from your bachelorette party? Did you feel like time stood still as if you were back in the situation?
I did. I felt like I was when I went away from my bachelorette, it was kind of like nothing had happened. It was like an escape. And then coming back to real world, it was weird because like I felt completely back to like physically normal. Like I felt like I was a whole new human again. But then like you come back home and like you go into the bathroom, like my bracelet was in there and like small little things, and it just like brings you right back to it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The grief and sadness comes out of nowhere.
It does. It really, really does.
Yeah.
Like
So,
there's days I can talk about it forever and be perfectly fine. And then I'll be talking with my husband about like a simple thing that happened and we just break down. And I'm like, I don't get it.
yeah. And it's so true though. And I think that's important to say so that women who are also breaking down
Yeah.
randomly know that it's okay.
It's okay to not be okay.
Yes. Completely. Yeah. How was life between your bachelorette party up until your wedding day?
Busy. Thankfully we planned our own wedding. So I was getting everything together. I was getting all the invitations out. I was doing the thank you, all the different things. So I will say from August to October, I didn't really have time to think much about it, it was great. As sad as that is, it was nice to not think about it for a little bit, considering it took over the last almost 2 years of our lives.
Yeah.
So you feel a little guilty at the same time, like enjoying yourself, knowing that at the end of the day, you're still going to think about it, but just enjoy the moments. And that's what we did for the next couple months. We were busy, enjoyed the moments. We went on our honeymoon after the wedding. And then we decided to start trying again after we did see a fertility specialist right before we got married. We saw one.
Okay. Okay.
So
and was that primarily to talk through, I've had all of these losses, what's going on?
Yep. It was pretty much just to kind of see if there was something major that was going on. So what we did, we went in. My husband did a semen analysis. His came back. It was good. Some things were like a little low, but nothing that they were concerned about. I got a bunch of blood work tests. They did a recurrent panel, like miscarriage panel loss on me. Did saline ultrasound. We did HSG. We did all the things. And everything was normal. I mean, they just, everything looks good. And at that point, they said, if you want to do IVF or an IUI, you guys are, you've been doing this. And at the time, our insurance just wasn't going to cover any of it. Okay. So they're like, you can keep trying. So that's what we decided to do because it's not cheap. So we decided we were going to try again on our own and see what happened. And we wound up with another miscarriage. And that was was that January? That was January.
Okay. How many weeks were you?
That one, I was about 8.5 weeks. So that was a further along one.
Yeah.
That was another one. The levels were going up great. And then they just started to drop. No reason for it. They couldn't figure out why. Just another one that was just unfortunate. Yeah. They say it's chromosomal, which, and it very well could be. And we will find out more of that, obviously, once we get more of our testing done on like embryos per se, once we get to that route. But
right.
But yeah, so that miscarriage was number 5, 5th pregnancy. That was miscarriage number 3. And then we got pregnant. No, I lost count. Ectopic, miscarriage, ectopic, miscarriage, ectopic. Yep. So we had 2 more. So we had that miscarriage and then we got pregnant again. In, what was that? July.
Okay.
And that was my first chemical, as they quoted it. We were about 4.5, 5 weeks.
Okay.
And that one was definitely different than all the others. And this may sound so bad, but I almost felt like I wasn't pregnant, and it felt like it was just a period in that sense, because I was so early.
Yeah.
And it was different. It wasn't as strong and it wasn't as heavy and all that stuff. So you feel almost like imposter syndrome. Like you have these positive tests, you have your HCG and all that, but it's just stopped. So It's a very weird feeling.
It is very weird. I've heard that before from other women who've had a chemical.
Yeah, and I think because I've had miscarriage, I've had ectopic, and then chemical. And don't get me wrong, like miscarriage and chemical, to me, they are the same thing. They're both miscarriages.
Mm-hmm.
Just the earlier you are, obviously your body can react differently, but it is a very different feeling, mentally and physically.
Yeah.
It is. So finally, we decided we're going to give ourselves one last cycle. We're like, and if this doesn't work, we will go into IVF, because my husband's job had switched over their insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And now we finally have some coverage. So this is now this past March. And we decided we're going to try everything. And we did. And I I'm pregnant. I found out I was pregnant, and this one felt different. And I know I've said that, but this one, it really did feel different. It was perfect ovulation. We did everything right. It was like 9 DPO. I got a good test. My HCG was slow and low rising. We started at like 12, but then we doubled every 2 days.
Okay.
And we got up to 500, and we looked great. I had no spotting. I had no cramping. And I was at like 6 weeks at this point, and I was like, okay, like not letting my guard down yet, but it just, I had no symptoms of anything. To where all my past ones, like by this point, I was having cramping, I was having bleeding, and all the different things. And then it was about a week and a half later, I was getting some bad cramping and spotting, and I had the pain on my right side. And I was like,
okay,
great. And we didn't take into account, our last month of trying, if it was ectopic. I was like, if I miscarry, I'll give myself another month off. I never took in consideration that we could have another ectopic and potentially lose my last tube.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. We went in for an ultrasound. They couldn't see anything in my uterus, and I was 6.5 weeks at this point, and my HCG wasn't high enough to see a full, but they said it should have been high enough to see something.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't seeing anything. So I went back again 2 days later, and they did a transvaginal ultrasound. Still weren't fully able to see anything, but my HCG was still rising. And they weren't sure. And there was nothing in my uterus. They did my uterus like 30 minutes trying to find anything at all. And at 6.5 to 7 weeks, there should have been something, especially if my numbers kept rising.
Right. Did they keep doubling as you?
Yep.
Okay. Wow.
Yep. They kept doubling. So when I was in the hospital they sent me home, and I was going to come back and just keep checking and make sure my levels were going where they needed to go. And then it was a Sunday morning, and I was in the bathroom, and all of a sudden I just got this really, really sharp pain. And I was like, here we go again. So I wasn't going to go to the hospital. I was like, I'm going to wait. Like maybe it'll just pass. And it wasn't passing. So we go into the hospital. They do an ultrasound. They can see that there's still nothing in my uterus. Numbers are still rising. And at this point, they are concerned that it's somewhere that they just can't see. It's a pregnancy of an unknown location.
Mm-hmm.
So they leave it up to me. They say, you can either wait and see what happens, which they did not recommend considering my past, or they can treat me with methotrexate again. And me and my husband talked about it. We had some time to talk about it this time. We talked about it for like an hour, and I decided to go with the methotrexate shot again, because I was like, if this is my last chance, I was like, I want to save my tube. I want to do everything I can to do. So they shot me up with methotrexate on Sunday. And by Sunday night, I was able to leave the hospital. But before I left, they did a full blood work on me to see where my regular blood counts and everything was. And my white blood count and my red blood count looked exactly the same as it did when I ruptured my first ectopic. And I was so nervous, because I was like, they just shot me up with methotrexate, and now I look at this and I'm like, is it already ruptured and we're just missing it, right? Because I'm like, so I told them my concerns, and they had said, your body is fighting an infection, so your levels are going to be a little bit lower. They're like, once you come back in to get your HCG, we'll do another CBC on you to see where your levels are at. And I said, okay. So I go home on Sunday. I do like bed rest, light work, Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday, I went into work because I sit at my desk all day. Like that's pretty much what I do. I was like, I need to like get out of the house and just like get myself, clear my head.
Yeah.
Go to work Wednesday. And then Thursday, I'm supposed to be going back to get my blood drawn. And at like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, my husband already had left for work 2 hours away. And I'm on the phone with my girlfriend, and all of a sudden I just get the worst pain in the entire world. And it was like a sandbag exploded in my stomach.
Really?
And I can remember
Oh,
it clear as day. I was on FaceTime and she looked at me and she's like, "You don't look okay." And I'm like, "I'm not okay." And all of a sudden it just like stabbing pain. And I was like, "It ruptured." And she's like, "Are you sure?" I was like, "Yep, it's like done." So I had to wind up driving myself to the hospital because we live in like a very farmland area. So it's either I take myself or I call an ambulance. And I was like, I can stand. Hospital is 20 minutes away. Worst comes to worst, I'll pull over to the side of the road and I will call 911. But I was like, I need to get to the hospital. So I get to the hospital, and my blood pressure is 160 over 110. My heart rate is through the roof as I'm sitting. So they rushed me back to an ultrasound. And within 2 minutes, there it is, free fluid all through my stomach. Call my husband. He's on his way from work, and rushed into surgery.
oh my gosh. I wish there were better words than I'm sorry, because truly that's how I feel. I just I can't imagine all of the pain that you've gone through. And the fact that you, before leaving the hospital after you got methotrexate this
I knew.
last,
It's
you
like I knew.
knew, and you asked
Yep.
the
It's like
question.
and that's why I like tell people, like, I'm like, listen to your body. And like nobody knows your body better than yourself. When they first went into the hospital, the one doctor was like, "Well, we want to check your appendix too." And I'm like, "It's not appendicitis." Like,
Wow.
so I will say my surgeon that I had, for my last ectopic, who was a god, she was an angel. She was the most wonderful doctor I had ever encountered through this entire journey so far. When I had my follow up with her after my surgery, she showed me like the pictures from surgery, which I didn't get to see for my first one, which was upsetting, but also still really cool to see at the same time, like what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, "Oh, also at the bottom there, I took a picture of your appendix for you. You were correct. It's completely healthy." And I'm like, "Thank you. Thank you."
You knew exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah. But I will say, like, women really just listen to your bodies. And if you think you're overreacting, you're not. You are not bothering anybody by going to get checked out at all.
No. So did they have to remove your other tube?
Yep. So
Wow.
it ruptured. So when I came out of surgery, they said they were going to try to save any part of it if they could. They weren't able to. And in doctor terms, I am sterile now.
Okay. So what is the definition of that?
So I'm no longer able to get pregnant on my own. Since I no longer have fallopian tubes, there's no way for the egg to get to the uterus on its own.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
How does that make you feel?
Like your whole world is flipped upside down. Yeah.
And
It's
to
one of
think
those,
that's
especially like, I feel like somebody for my instance, like I've always wanted to be a mom growing up. Like it was like the one thing, like even my sisters say it all the time. Like I've taught everyone's like, "How do you deal with like the twos and the threes?" I'm like, I love the little one. Like that is like my prime age. And they're like, "I don't know how you do it." And I'm like, "Well, you like high schoolers. I could never do high school."
Mhm.
But being told that like that is no longer an option. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and yes, we can IVF and adoption or surrogacy, of course, but it's different.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I just feel like, I mean, this is the perfect instance as to why medical professionals need to be listening to
Mm-hmm.
the patient.
Yep. Because had they just listened to me the first time that I went in, I'm not saying my tube maybe wouldn't have ruptured, but I
Right.
feel like if they would have taken it a little bit more serious as to what I was doing and what I was saying, that I don't know, because I mean, obviously they still gave me the methotrexate and it just didn't work.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What were your numbers at that point?
Yep. So when I first went into the hospital, I was at 536. That was on Saturday night. And then they kept me overnight just to see what was going on. Sunday morning, they did another HCG before the methotrexate, and it went down to 426. So that's
Okay.
when the methotrexate conversation came into play.
Mm-hmm.
And with the numbers dropping, I was like, you know what? Let's just do the safest way possible. But with my numbers dropping and then my red blood count, my white blood count still didn't look good. I was like, it's still making me feel like uneasy.
Yeah.
But I was like, my numbers are dropping. My HCG is dropping. I got treated with methotrexate. Like, everything will be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went back to the hospital that Thursday and my numbers were up in the 1300s. So even with the methotrexate, it
Right.
tripled. So it was
Wow.
still.
Yep.
Yep.
It was.
They tried.
They tried.
They tried. But then it makes me like second guess myself of like getting the shot, because I'm like, well, if I didn't get the shot, would it have fixed itself and like pushed its way through? We will never know. So like, that's always
That's
like
one of the hardest parts, is backtracking and thinking through the decisions that you made or the decisions the medical team made.
Mm-hmm.
That unknown part of it is terrible, and it keeps you up at night.
It does. And even though you tell yourself, like, in that moment, what we did was the best and safest option at that time, you still always like have that second thought in your head.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's, part of that is the timeline aspect of it. You move so past, or not past, so fast through each decision and each piece of information that you just don't have enough time to ask the right questions, research properly,
to process even what's going on. Like, and I feel you're completely right. I feel like the timeline, like, it's not like we had like a couple weeks to figure out what we wanted to do, and like we had minutes to hours to a day. Like, and it's especially when you're in like an emergency room situation, that you're not around people who are, not saying that they're not understanding or they're not, compassionate, but like, it's not their job to be that person right then and there. So like you already feel like you're being dismissed in that sense. So it's like any decision you're making in that moment, you're going to second guess it because you don't feel like you were in the right spot anytime.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, how are you doing today?
We're doing okay. I will say I'm definitely in a much better headspace. I feel like I've gotten to a point where I have almost like taken our past 7 pregnancies and not store them away or put them away in any sense, but like that was one book. That was our one chapter. And I have to close that chapter in order to start our next chapter. And like, we're working on fully healing before just jumping into an IVF cycle.
Mm-hmm.
I have to make sure that I can mentally prepare for what is to come, because again, IVF is not a guarantee. So like, there is that chance that there is miscarriage. And so I just want to make sure that I can mentally handle that in case that is our situation again.
Yeah, that's a great headspace to be in. And I love the fact that you've realized this is just a chapter in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to be starting the next chapter soon. And there are success stories in circumstances like yours who have lost tubes. And there is that hope. And I truly hope that you see that.
Yeah.
There's light at the end of the tunnel out there. And I do say that quite often, but it's true. Sometimes you can't see past that tunnel of darkness, but It's there.
And as one of my favorite sayings or quotes is that we've been through so many storms that it's about time that the rainbow starts to pop out.
It's about
So
time, Samantha.
that's where we are.
Yeah. Well, how have you coped throughout your entire journey?
Yeah,
And
so
I'm sure with the different times of your life you've coped in different ways, but I'm
absolutely.
just curious because I feel like a lot of us cope in different ways, but we also cope in similar ways.
Yeah. So I will say my main way of coping, I am a dark humor with that is the way that I deal with anything. Um, it is, it's just makes me feel better knowing that if I can't make a joke out of something, then it didn't happen. It's so hard to explain. I feel like, sometimes when I say things and like certain jokes, people will look at me and be like, "Are you okay?" And I want to be like, if I'm not making these jokes, then be worried. Like, it is my way of saying I am okay. It's my way of being like, this is my way of talking about it without talking about it.
Mhm.
And if you want to talk to me about it, I am an open book, but I am not that type of person to just bring it up to other people, because I feel as if not everybody wants to talk about it. And that's
Yeah.
okay. And I've gotten to a point in my life that after almost 4 years of this, you realize who you can talk about things with and who you can't talk about things with.
Mhm.
So, like, for me, like, coping and doing different, like, I do like little skits that I put on TikTok.
Oh,
It's
fun.
fun. And like little things like that.
Yeah.
But I will say, aside from like the laughter and all that, my favorite thing to do is journal. Honestly, it seems as cliche as it sounds, it is the best way, whether it's just like a notepad, the notes in your phone, just like typing anything out, like a little piece of paper. I feel like whenever I'm thinking something or feeling something, if I just put it down and get it out of my head,
Mhm.
it saves me so much later on in the day. Because if
Mhm.
not, then I just store everything. And I did that for a long time. I just held everything in for a very long time. And that was not good.
It gets so overwhelming.
It's so overwhelming. In the time you feel like I can hold it all in, I can handle it, it's fine. And then you break. And
Yeah.
then you become like a different person. So
Mhm.
it takes a while to get that back.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just to write it out, whether it's in your journal, in your notes, or maybe you're texting your husband, getting it out uh, is medicine. It,
Yeah.
it literally just helps you cope. Because, yeah, if you bottle it up for too long, you're just going to blow up at one point.
Mm-hmm. And as much as people don't like talking about, we did have that moment. It took me holding everything in. And I think it was after my fourth loss that like I just acted like I was completely fine. Like put up a wall, kind of like disassociate yourself. Like you go to work, you come home, you do your things. And my husband travels a lot for work. So like I was home by myself most of the time. So coming home to an empty house, it's very, what else are you going to do? And
Yeah.
then, after the fourth loss, I just kind of like broke down and was like, I can't do this. Like, it's hard.
No, you can't do it.
Yeah.
That's
Not
why
alone.
no, that's why you need a support system.
Mm-hmm. Very much.
Um, how did your husband do throughout all of this? And, even when he was a boyfriend and then a fiance, and you guys have been through a lot
I will
in
say,
a
yeah,
short period of time.
we
And,
have, yeah, so
for
we have been together 6 years.
Mhm,
We've known each other since high school. So like I will say it's nice to like know, and we really are best friends, but he has been an absolute rock through this. I would not be here without him.
mhm,
No way.
yeah.
He like holds it together for the both of us, which is nice.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I felt like my husband did that too. He was so focused on me and making sure that I was okay
Yep.
that he really didn't start to process the situation until 8-9 months after the fact.
Yeah.
And then it was almost like reverse. I had to support him and make sure he was okay. But yeah, I've said the same thing. I wouldn't have been able to go through that without him.
No.
Anyone else, he just was the perfect support system for me.
Same thing with my husband. I said, like, and it's funny, people say, like, oh, like, you guys have been through so much. And like, before we even got married, like, we had put ourselves through the ringer. Like, and it was like, if we can get through this together, like, we're going to be okay. Like, granted, there's a lot of things that can happen to us in the future, but like, this is something like early on, like, if we can make our way through this together and like be there for each other through this, like, at such like an exciting time in our lives where like we should be going on vacations and like enjoying life. And instead, here we are behind closed doors, like, you know.
Yeah.
I will say like I said, he's been a rock. The first time that I noticed that he was like upset and scared was my first surgery. I think that scared him the most.
Yeah. When you were wheeled away and
Yep.
Yeah. That was probably really tough for both of you to say goodbye. And Kara, one of the women I interviewed recently, she was talking about how hard that was to know that she was going into the OR pregnant, and when she'd wake up, she wouldn't be pregnant anymore, and being wheeled away from her husband, and just going through all of those emotions, but also having to be separated from your husband and come back, and it just be a completely different life.
And that's exactly what it is. You come back to a new life. It's the life that you had before is gone. Yeah. And you have to start thinking about the new one and how that even looks to you at that point. And when you come out, it's the last thing you even want to think about, but it's your new reality. So
yeah, it is. I just want to commend you for coming on and being vulnerable, because it's been quite a roller coaster for you. And the fact that your third ectopic recently happened this year, I definitely wouldn't have been able to be on in your situation. So I just want to say you're doing an awesome job. And I feel like through all of the losses that you've had and the stories you've shared about them, someone is going to connect with one of them, with multiple. Just thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It was kind of refreshing to kind of talk about it. In a sense, it's therapeutic.
Yes, it is crazy, because most women that have come on here after they've shared their story and we sign off the actual episode and just chat a little bit, they say the exact same thing. And I think it's great. It's almost like the journaling aspect. You're not writing it down, but you're piecing all of your stories together, saying it out loud, and knowing you're going to help someone is very therapeutic.
Well, I will say to anybody out there who has gone through an ectopic pregnancy that it is not your fault. You did nothing wrong. There's nothing you could have done. And just hold on to your partner, and they will be the person to help you get through every single thing that you need.
I couldn't say it better myself. Thank you so much, Samantha.
Thank you very much for having me, Kirsten. It was wonderful.
Thank you for listening to the Ectopic Pregnancy Support Podcast. If you are looking for additional resources, head to ectopicpregnancysupport.com to learn more about my exclusive online support chat. Also, don't forget to follow me on Instagram and Facebook. See you next time.